Okay.
Do you have any extra agendas?
I probably have the only copy.
Okay. No, go with it, go ahead.
He usually has copies here, so. And public participation. You have a few moments, go right ahead.
Thank you. I talked at the last meeting about being on the budget committee, and I looked at the town charter, and part of the town charter, it addresses two areas for the school board, and one, how you're elected and how your terms are served. But it also says, and I'm going to read the whole paragraph so you understand where I'm coming from. It says, in addition to articles in the town warrant for the election of officials required in the charter, there shall be an article for the election of a committee of citizens as specified in section 303 to be known as the budget committee. 3 members from the public at large to be elected to staggered 3-year terms. The budget committee shall make recommendations to the town on proposed expenditures and aid the municipal officers in determining recommended expenditures. In addition, the budget committee shall make recommendations to the school board of directors on proposed expenditures and aid the school board of directors in determining recommended expenditures. And the next paragraph, it talks about reports and warrants and things. And what we got this year was the last 3 years. And I'm asking the school board, when you're preparing your budget to come up to the committee to go over it, if you're doing, each one of your line items should have the last 3 years, or 2 years, and the current year that you're working on, which is 16-17, 17-18, and then 18-19, what you're proposing, so that we can see across the board how we are doing with expending monies for the town, whether they're going way up, way down, or how the money is being spent. If you just, when we go to the town meetings, you give us one piece of paper and it just has a bunch of information on it, we don't know, we have to ask questions, well, what was it last year, or so on and so forth. That is a big help, and they use something here, I think she said it's called Trio. I don't know what the budget, school board, I'm sorry, uses, but if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. So we would like to see across the board the last 2 years and what you're proposing for this year.
I have seen that on the town budget, and it is very helpful to understand, you know, what are the increases, what are the decreases. It is very helpful on that. It would be nice to synchronize the budget so that it looks uniformly very similar to the town. It can be very understood by everyone.
The other thing that it shows us for the current year is what we have left in the budget. Now, of course, I just was at the budget meeting here, and it shows us what we have left until June. So we know whether we're going to be short or we're going to be way over. So that's how we know whether to cut or hold what we're spending. We have predicted for 2018-19.
Board members get that every month right now.
Well, I'm saying to you, when you come here, if you should have that when you sit with the budget committee. I told them that I would ask that that's how it be done, please. It would help everybody, and we'll move along quickly for us.
Okay.
And on that, can you tell me, have you guys met on your budget?
Not yet.
Not yet. Thank you very much, so I can report back. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, would you like an agenda, Barbara?
May I please? Thank you, Tina.
You know if you get arrested or not, or pulled over,
He's
so.
stuck in a roadblock.
Okay.
I was in a roadblock, all right.
Were you? To consider,
7 cars deep.
How many?
7 cars deep. We had a parade coming in, so.
to consider the approval of the January 18, 2018 school committee minutes as written with corrections as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Do we need a copy of those? Copy of those.
I move to accept the minutes from January 18, 2018 as written.
Second.
All in favor? Carries. Principal's report.
Thanks, Sam.
This first one talks about the Washington County Leadership Team. They did write a grant, and we have been notified that we will be receiving that grant. Mr. Johnson, I'm sure you have more detail than I do. I don't know how much the money is, but basically, it will bring back the old Washington County Consortium. It will pay somebody to pull together our professional development here in Washington County. It is specifically for all schools in Washington County. So instead of teachers needing to travel to Bangor for something, it can happen in Machias. We've been doing that for 2 years now. Garrett money, Mr. Johnson?
It's funded currently with
Yes,
Garrett money,
through
and
Garrett
it will
money.
be for one more year.
Which was a very small amount. So this will employ somebody, and that person will then be responsible for looking for more grants to keep that going. There was an amount over how much we would save for 10 years, and I don't remember the exact figure, so I don't want to say it in case I'm wrong. The next one talks about an article that was in the Machias Valley that Phil Stewart wrote, and I did highlight just a piece of it. It talks about sportsmanship and behavior needs attention, and what I highlighted was, it just simply reads, Lubec has been a good leader in promoting sportsmanship, and it has spread to other schools. So I think that's important. Too often at the junior high level, people take these games to heart and things get heated, and that says we're doing a nice job. Our girls travel team won the championship Wednesday night. That was here in Lubec. We have cheering competition on February 24th in Calais at 10 o'clock. The junior and mini teams will be going. And then on March 4th at the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor at 10 a.m. the junior and mini teams will be going. On March 1st will be the next parent-teacher community
Collaboration.
Thank you, collaboration from 6 to 7 in room 102. March 9th we have an early release day, and also on March 9th report cards close. There's a new project going on called Project Clam. It is at the Beals Island Hatchery, grades 5 and 6. That is a training for Mr. Jones and Mrs. Morse. The training is actually at the University of Machias, I believe, or did they go to Brighton? Remember? I don't remember. But they'll be growing clams, and it will expose kids to some of the things that we do here locally. Pleased to say that with Mrs. Street and Miss Bosquet and other parents and community members, the Carnation fundraising raised $334, and the Valentine's dance, again, thanks to Mrs. Street and Miss Bosquet and other community members and parents, that raised $288.50. This is the result of parents wanting this to be brought back to life. I would certainly thank the parents and those who are involved. At the same time, I'd say there's room for a lot more parents to get involved. We only have 2 or 3, and that would be helpful. They've done a nice job with that. That money will go to Dino Man, which is a presentation that will be brought in April for the kids at school. Pee Wee basketball games begin after February vacation and end before April vacation. We still continue to work on proficiency-based education. We're starting to do some planning for our next professional development day. I think what the focus will be that we'll be looking at will be creating that climate of proficiency-based education, looking at common language, starting to refer to students as learners. And it's to break that mindset. You know, some people say, well, my aunt can't read and I'm not a good reader, and that's just the way it is in the family. So just trying to break that train of thought and have kids start to realize, yes, you're all learners, you all can learn. Teacher evaluation is currently going on. All teachers have completed their growth plan. I have been in to do my first observation, and most of them either have completed or are working on their first SLO, which is the student learning objective. There's so many letters, I'm trying to get them straightened out. The team, which consists of Anna Street, Michelle Mitchell, Sherry Shute, Penny Lasky, Chris Robinson, and myself. We have a comprehensive needs assessment that is due into the state by July 1st. We are almost done our rough draft. Our goal is to get that to the state prior to April vacation, so if they kick it back, we still have some time to make those changes. And this again, to the camera, is an invitation to community and board members to join the team. That is something that the state asks. We don't have any members that represent
Can you
that.
remind me what the comprehensive needs assessment is?
It is a plan that goes into the Department of Ed for Title I. You look at your staff, your students, professional development activities, you set goals for what's needed based on looking at student data through, our big one is STAR testing. The state testing, sorry state if you're listening, they keep changing it so much that you really can't, it's like comparing apples and oranges. You know, last year was the first year again for a new test. So that's what this is, looking at ourselves, what do we need to do? How do we improve? How do we help students? And that is my report.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I went to the dance, I think that was a huge success. It's wonderful. The kids, there was a lot of kids there, and it was so good for the community. And I know there's only like a couple parents and that parent-teacher collaboration. Is there anything the board could do to help get that? Is there any other kind of advertising? Anything that we can do to get people more energized on it?
I know we send messages home through school messenger. We try to remember to do it the week before and then the day of or something like that. It is a standard the first Thursday of the month, trying to keep that consistency. We talk about it here at board meetings. I know it's been put in newspapers.
I know.
I'm not sure.
Has there been anything in the past that has worked?
That's why it fizzled
But
out.
I think it's a wonderful
That's
thing.
why it fizzled out. is because it
Yeah,
was
I'd like to
just-
help anything possible to see that it doesn't fizzle out this time, because I think it's just a wonderful thing that's going on.
I guess the other thing to say is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to come to every meeting. If you can only make one meeting, that's one more meeting. That's another set of helping hands.
Yep, absolutely. I have a question about the grant too. Is that an AOS thing?
Washington County
It's the
law.
whole county, and who's the grant writer?
Okay, that was a FEDIS grant. You're referring to the one that we recently, that Tina just spoke about.
So somebody in the county is the grant writer for
In
that?
that particular case, the information was submitted on behalf of all the schools in the county. I believe that went through Beth Clifford.
Beth Clifford, Judy Enright, we did
Right.
she was stuck in an airport and we were going FaceTime back and forth writing this thing.
So, Lubec's portion has been considered in that grant? Or are we just allotted, every school's just allotted a certain amount?
It's one pot of money for the collaborative, and it's designed, as Tina has said, to keep the professional development initiative going through the consortium. It does provide for a full-time director's position. The grant, however, is only for 1 year duration, and state officials actually visited and spoke with two of our member superintendents. It was not myself, but it was two of our other superintendents, Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Ramsey. And they were asking questions about sustainability. What is your plan beyond year one? Superintendents as a group met Wednesday specifically about this matter because historically the collective superintendents have exercised supervision over the consortium's budget. One of the school departments has been a fiscal agent. In the past, it has been Maine Indian Ed. Currently, it's Callis for the consortium. But the group is currently fleshing out a job description for the director to be named as to what our expectations are and how the oversight is going to proceed. But it is very much the desire of the superintendents as a group to see that that initiative survive beyond 1 year. But we do have funding for the upcoming year.
So you will be representing Lubec?
And all of the other schools within AOS
Yes.
77. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Each
All right.
district's allowed 2 team members on the Washington County leadership team.
Right.
And
That are
for-
paid for by the grant?
No, we volunteer our time.
Oh,
So the 2 for AOS 77 are Mr. Johnson and myself.
okay. And the director, will that be based in Machias?
Primarily, the director, we believe at this time is going to have a space at the university.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where prior directors have been housed, and I believe there are some records in a room up there from past events. I know years ago, there was a big literacy push that was organized through the consortium, and local schools were able to take great advantage of that. But that's going to be higher than you on that.
Isn't that where the majority of professional development occurs anyways?
When we talk countywide, yes, and the reason for that is because Machias is seen largely as a fairly central location. Halfway between Narragansett and Calais, probably a little bit closer to Guegas than Calais, but yeah.
Okay, anyone on the school board have anything? Not tonight. Okay, superintendent's report.
Several items of interest this evening. First of all, I'd like to extend my apologies to the group. I was coming along and got into a string of 7 or 8 cars, and I did not think it was slippery, but somebody in front of me thought that it was. So I apologize for my tardiness. Note to self, that means leave a little bit earlier. So I'm here, happy to be here, and pleased to share some information with you.
We were concerned that maybe you were
Well,
caught up in the dragnet.
a furry woodland creature did not run out in front of me, but I made it. First item in my report this evening, subsidy figures. I'm sharing these with you, and actually, there's a list here so you can see how the other towns in the AOS made out. I have a few extras here if there are any of you who would like to see one. I need to keep one. You can distribute those as far as they'll go. Okay, the top half of the sheet, you can see FY19 subsidy. Those were released January 31st, so these are fairly hot off the press. In just about every case, schools in AOS 77 receive more subsidy. And if you look down at the bottom of the list, RSU 85, MSAD 19, right here in Lubec, I'm pleased to say you've received a gain of $73,000 in subsidy. And that is a significant amount. So if you're wondering, why is that? That comes down to several things. First of all, the state increased the funding to EPS to 100%. There was an adjustment built in there called the transition adjustment, but EPS is now funded at 100%. What helped you the most, however, was that minimum subsidy receivers saw their reimbursement for special education costs increase from 33 to 40%. That helped you the most. So as you can see, your subsidy is going to increase from $172,000 to $245,000. So that's certainly welcome news for us here in Lubec. One word of caution that I must pass along. If we look at the bottom half of the sheet, the required local, Lubec's required local component, the local foundation that you must raise by law, increased also by $41,000, and that amount of money is raised through taxation. So if you consider the two sums of money and how the formula works, and look on page 2, Lubec, the net increase, or the net gain, if you will, for Lubec is $32,128. So the obvious question is, what happened? Why didn't Lubec realize more of that $73,000 figure? And the answer is because the town's valuation increased, as you can see on page 2. I put that increase down there for you. The increase in Lubec, I didn't put that on there for you what it was. It was enough to make the town's valuation increase. You ticked up to $176 million. That's what the valuation, the state thinks the valuation of Lubec is. And I listed Alexander and Eastport on here for comparison purposes because Alexander and Eastport showed a net loss. So even though everybody got more subsidy, Eastport's valuation increased by $5.3 million. Alexander's valuation increased by $2.5 million. So as a result, the local foundation in those two towns increased more than the subsidy, which produced a net loss. In your case, your subsidy increased more than the local foundation, so you gained the $32,000. So in that regard, we are fortunate to come ahead.
Mr. Johnson, I guess I'm not quite sure on that, and that's the state's
Yep.
explanation, I understand. They're giving us 73,
Right?
but out of the 73, we're only going to see 32. So where did the other go? The difference, where does it go? Back to the state?
No, it's a good question, though, Barbara. You're going to get the full 73.
Okay,
However, you still have to raise more in the required local through taxation. So your subsidy figure, it will show 245, 458. The local foundation that this town has to raise by law will be a higher amount. It will be the $1,140,000. So they are giving you more money, and then they're asking you to raise more money locally through taxation.
who's the genius that's doing this math down there?
It's really something, and it broke my heart to go to Eastport and Alexander and tell those folks that even though the state promised more subsidy, it's going to be a net loss. I'm happy to say that's not the case in Lubec, but if you're wondering how that works on your funding formula, your town's valuation is multiplied by the state mill rate, which at 8.51 is the highest I've ever seen it on the funding forms. And that's you're essentially multiplying two larger numbers together to arrive at this $1,140,000 figure. So overall, the news is good. You're gaining $32,000 net, but the devil is in the details. It'd been very nice if we could have enjoyed 73, but we are going to net 32. Do I have any questions from the board regarding how that works, regarding that?
I just have a curiosity question. What is Eastport valued at?
Eastport's valuation increased to 140 million.
140.
Well, that's a good question. Here in Lubec, because I've actually looked at some of them around the county, you have the second highest valuation in the county.
Who's
And
number one?
Number one's Baileyville. They've got a pulp and paper mill and a tissue mill. You're number two, ahead of cows. And I was speaking with somebody today, and I spoke of this at the Superintendent's Association meeting on Wednesday, that Calais is a much larger economic engine than Lubec. More business, international border crossing, just plain more. But the way the formula works, essentially, the state thinks Lubec's ability to pay is greater. That's what the relationship is, the valuation to the formula. Because the valuation is a rough indicator of the town's ability to pay. So the average person visiting Calais and Lubec can obviously see the difference. It's pertinent because the biggest source of income here in Lubec comes through residential taxes. You don't have a large industry in town like a mill that pays huge taxes to the town. It all comes from residential property taxes.
Because we have 97 miles of shoreline.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's right, Larry. That's exactly it. Geographically, you're a large land mass, you're on a peninsula, so you've got water on both sides. And that's what contributes to your valuation pretty much. Okay, so kind of a mixed blessing, but nonetheless, we finished with a blessing being in the black on that calculation by 32,000. Next item that I'm going to go to. I'm calling this a legislative update because I've got a copy of the law here. This is actually in place right now. But I need to call the board's attention to this as well, in case you hear something in a newspaper article or get a question from a concerned citizen or whatever the case may be. If we look at this, well, I need one. What you see here, obviously, is a copy right out of the law book. And what I would call your attention to is the right-hand column. These are expenditure targets, if you will, that have been written into the law. And it says for fiscal year 18-19, the target is 61%. So if you read right below that where I've highlighted, the state is saying 61% of your budget should be spent on what's listed there. Regular instruction, special education instruction, career and technical education instruction, and other instruction, which is defined as summer school, extracurricular things, and so on. So I call your attention to this just to make you aware of a trend that is emerging at the state level. For years, the state has heard criticism that you're not funding schools enough and the formula is unfair, and their position is that they have injected more money into the formula over the years. We know here in Lubec that any additional money they've injected into the formula finds its way to the southern part of the state in the larger districts that have more students, more faculty, just plain more. So what is the state getting at here? They're trying to, I guess you could say, influence schools to spend money in these areas. So what's included in these areas? The biggest two on the list, regular instruction and special education instruction, probably comprise the vast majority of your budget. There is no probably about it, they definitely do. Regular instruction includes your teacher salaries, and it also includes tuition. We know here in Lubec that tuition is a major driver in your budget, upwards of $470,000 we spend in tuition. So if you're wondering, and you ask me, Mr. Johnson, should we be worried about 61%? Here in Lubec, the answer is no. Because if you consider teacher salaries, tuition, special education instruction, you don't spend a lot of money on anything else. The only other things that would come into the discussion about how much money you spend are transportation and school lunch. So I am very confident that Lubec is going to be fine as far as meeting the 61% goes. I just make you aware of this, and it's something to just keep in mind if somebody asks you a question out on the street. The one I highlighted on the left, the 1 through 11, you might recognize these. These are the areas that we vote on in terms of the warrant, when we vote in June for the school budget, regular instruction, and we vote on each one of those individually. Those cost centers are dictated by the state's accounting handbook. If you're wondering where those come from and why the warrant matches, that is why. So at this point, the last thing I would say about it is, I've got my staff looking at all the budgets as to make sure that our budgets are organized, so when we upload data to the state, we are accurately showing what we are spending in those areas. And it's particularly important that I mention this here in Lubec, because your budget breaks out pre-K to 2 in one cost center with a bunch of codes, and 3 to 8 with another bunch of codes. The code that uploads your 3 to 8 data is actually a pre-K to 8 code. We upload the pre-K to 2 data under a different code, and there's never been a problem. So if you're wondering what the difference is, some parts of the state have pre-K to 2 schools, middle schools, high schools, they're broken out by grade level. So somewhere in the distant past, those expenses were reported separately. I've asked my staff to combine pre-K to 2, 3 to 8 under one code to avoid any confusion with this, because I want to make sure Lubec gets credit for spending money where we actually spend it. So the sheet that Mike was speaking to Barbara about, the reports that all of you get monthly, the expenditure reports, they have a bunch of codes underneath the cost center. Those codes are uploaded via software, and they tell the state where we spend our money by line. X amount for teacher salaries, X amount for supplies, right on down to they're identified by code. When I come with a draft budget, which will probably happen next time, your budget, I'm going to probably bring it as a pre-K to 8 budget and not break out those cost centers into pre-K to 2 and 3 to 8. But I want to make sure that all of you are comfortable with that reorganization. I mean, if you want to keep it the old way, you can tell me, and we'll keep it the old way. But I want to make sure that I don't get into a coding issue with the state. Well, what do you, I mean, I know I'm throwing a lot at you all at once, and you can give me your feedback at any time, but do you have any initial reaction about that?
I'd like to see the budget simplified.
Okay.
So when you flip through it, I would rather see them all together than broken up,
Right.
because it would make it much more easier when you roll your eyes over to see, okay, this makes sense, instead of having to flip back and forth and doing comparing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to see that. I have a question on this.
Certainly.
The 61%, does that include the AOS $105,000 payments that we have to make? Is that included in this, Or is that separate?
No, what is included is specifically regular instruction, special education instruction, career and technical instruction, and other instruction.
But it says, the school administration and special education, which are the two things that we pay the AOS for.
Okay.
So the 105,000, is AOS services included in this? in
These are the
expenditures?
cost centers on our
Mhm.
budget.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to do with this.
Right.
Okay.
What's in the 61% is right underneath it. That's what's included in the 61%.
Okay, right. So, good question, and just so we understand, Lubec's share of superintendent's central office staff is organized under system administration. That is not included in the 61%.
Okay.
In some places, the special education director is included under special education instruction, but your percentage of the administrative cost of your special ed director is much less than the direct cost would be for educating the students. So if I have to pull out special education administration and organize it under system administration, I can. But you will, I am very confident you will still meet the 61% threshold based on where you're spending everything else. So that's a good question, thank you. Okay. Couple other items. Audit report. I'm pleased to say that the news is good. Bring me a copy with you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll work on this one. I've got two copies here. I did receive 2 requests from the community last year for a copy of the audit. I brought 2 with me.
That one?
I got one.
I didn't get one.
I'll make you a copy.
I would have been standing in one.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay. The first page I want to call your attention to, let's all turn to page 24. Page 24 shows your position in terms of the general fund. And this is the most important page in your budget. It shows where you spent your money, shows what your revenue is, and also shows your carryover at the end of the year. So you see 4 columns. First one at the top says original budget. That's what we voted on. Final budget, it's the same because you did not have to change your budget. Actual shows actual revenues and actual spending, and then the variance on the right. So the first number I'm going to call your attention to before we dig into it a little bit more is under actual, all the way at the bottom, where it says ending fund balance, budget basis. And the reason I say I'm coming with good news is because this number is $256,242. Last year at this time, I reported a $50,000 deficit. So, you may wonder, how did we go from being $50,000 in the red to $250,000 in the black? And that's a very logical question to ask. So let's take a look. If we back up one page, to page 23, I can explain a couple of things here. First of all, you will see where it says revenue mispostings, $40,462. If you have a pen and are taking notes, this occurred in 2012, 6 years ago. $40,462 was posted as revenue to Title I instead of the general fund. So your auditor made that correction. That automatically improved your position by $40,462. You went from the negative $50,434 that you see listed right below it to a negative $9,972. So your position improved dramatically just by that one correction. And the reason I highlight that revenue misposting took place in 2012 leads me to my next point. As the audit process rolled out, I gave your auditor 4 years' worth of historical data all the way back to 2011 to make sure that she had enough information to go year by year to accurately state Lubec's position. And I'm pleased to say that the corrections that have been made significantly improve your position. So she found more revenue that was misposted 6 years ago.
Who posted it?
That
The
would
wrong
have,
column.
that would have been previous employees in the central office.
Thank you.
Now, the other thing I need to make us aware of, since we're looking at this page, right above that, you see funds due back to the state of Maine for duplication, $23,145. I want to make sure everybody understands what that is. That is federal money. We are not sending back local money, we are sending back federal money, because there was a duplicate request for funds, and that's Title I money. We cannot spend it because it is beyond the time period when we can spend it. So on the warrant, which I have with me tonight, there is a warrant posting that says Treasurer State of Maine, $23,145 that we have to reimburse the state. It is federal money, the state distributes it, and in the case of a reimbursement, we send it back to the state. So that's what that number refers to, and that is on the warrant this evening. So, if we turn back to page 24, I will continue the analysis. If you look at the top section under revenue, our revenue projections were very close. That's good budgeting. We ended up taking in $2,700 more revenue than we thought. And if you're wondering why in parentheses it says under the state subsidies row that we received $19,000 less than the state said, what that is, that's a main care seed money. That's a fee that the state passes on to us for main care billing. We don't know what that fee is going to be until after we do your budget, but that $19,376, that's a main care seed fee that the state assesses to us, and they just take it off the subsidy, and that's why it's represented that way. Overall, we did not have a revenue shortfall. We brought in $2,700 more in revenue. The middle section under expenditures is what I want to call our attention to, because this accounts for the vast majority of why we are now $256,000 in the black. Under regular instruction, special education instruction, you can see that we pulled through $85,000 and $92,000 respectively. The question is, how could we pull through that much money in both places? Regular instruction includes your tuition line. If you have a student that changes residencies during the course of the year, somebody goes to live with dad, mom and dad move away to another town, whatever the case may be, we stop paying tuition when they are no longer residents. So out of that $85,910, between 50 and 60 is right on the tuition line because of student movement. So if you have 5 or 6 kids during the course of a year that either change residencies or don't live in town like we thought they were going to, you don't pay tuition on. You essentially pull that money through, and that's what you're seeing here. So the other money would be whatever we pulled through on the remaining lines, whether it's on the supply line, whether a teacher budgeted to take a course and didn't take it, but the majority of that savings is through the tuition line. Special education tuition is again an area of savings in your expenditures for the same reason. If you have a special education student at the secondary level that changes residencies, you don't pay. In the case of special education, there are some other items that we budget for, like OT and PT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech. There are those items that we have to budget for, because if you have a student in town that needs those services, you must provide them by law. However, if you don't have a student that needs those services, we don't spend the money. So we pull that through. Transportation and facilities maintenance, 2 areas of savings. What you see under transportation, we have some money left on the fuel lines. We budget an amount of money for fuel. We finished with money on those lines. We were happy to pull through $10,000 in transportation. Facilities maintenance, We budget for facilities maintenance, and this would include the heating oil line. Last winter was a very mild winter, so our consumption was less. Whatever we don't expend in heating fuel is pulled through on that line. Finally, contingency. We did not have to dip into the contingency, but if that contingency figure looks a little high, here's why. Of that 34,246, 24,246 had to be carried contractually because we had a teacher retire during the previous year, but we had to pay off that retirement provision during the next fiscal year. 10,000 is your regular contingency, but we had to carry an additional 24,246 to balance out the teacher retirement provision per contract. Now, if you're wondering what the nuts and bolts are, and this may be more detailed than you need, we can't pay a salary through contingency. So the salary was paid out through regular instruction, but we had to carry the money on the contingency line to balance it out so you didn't have a shortfall. So that accounts for what appears to be an abnormally high contingency line, but that retirement provision was contractual.
Mr. Johnson, may I ask you a question?
Certainly.
On this, if you don't mind, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're
That-
reading, so you wouldn't look at
That's
this
okay.
where I am. Some of this money was saved through the secondary level, high school, I assume, doing high school students. How does the high schools that we send our students to, when they graduate from Lubec, they're billed, they're sending the bills to Lubec, but if the parent forgets to tell them, oh, well, we moved, we're not in Lubec anymore,
Right.
how do they find out that we're not paying the tuition?
Good question, and here's the answer. Both Machias and WA send tuition bills to my office.
Okay,
It has a list of names, you know, Little Johnny, Little Susie, and they're Lubec residents. And if there's a dispute about the name and the residency, more to the point, the residency, I call Tina and say, is this family still living in town? And if she doesn't know, then she uses her local contacts to try and verify.
that's what I'm saying, because we've had that happen over the years where students will leave and go off to Trescott, it's still the same zip code and stuff, and we're paying the tuition, and we shouldn't be, the state should, so thank you for answering.
But there is a verification process, and I get questioned on that in a lot of towns.
And if school board members get to see it, only reason I ask is because your office deals with a lot of, but these people here would know who the community members are, I would think, for the most part, having gone through the elementary and then into the high school.
I have, and other school board members in the past have known when a child has moved out of town, and actually we've put a note on the warrant not to approve that particular.
That's all I'm asking, I figured you guys would know, no thanks.
So there's like 3 or 4 checks that we
That's
can
great.
count on.
Thank you.
Any questions at this juncture from other board members? I'll wrap up here in a few minutes, I promise. If we look again, just to transition to the next thing, the 256, 242 figure, let's keep that in mind because that's your position at the end of June 30th, 2017. So moving forward, how does this all work as we begin to construct our budget for the upcoming year? Let's look at page 9. And on this page, what I want to call to your attention are accrued liabilities. Accrued accounts payable that you see under liabilities, 5364, those represent outstanding expenses that we hadn't been billed for before the end of the fiscal year. We had committed the funds either through a purchase order or some type of purchase, but we just didn't get billed for it until after the fiscal year. So the auditor, June 30th is like a hard stop. But we had some irons in the fire, if you will. That's since been paid as we're well beyond June 30th of 2017 now. What I really want to call to your attention is accrued contracted salaries. General Fund 62,270, Special Revenue Fund 17,927. These are contracted salary amounts that we owe our employees for July and August. The teacher's contract, as you all know, most of them are on an August 31st to September 1st cycle, but the fiscal year ends June 30th. So there are 2 months of contracted expenses that we owe our employees that are occurring after the fiscal year. So that's what that number represents. The reason is that it is important is this. Final calculation, back to page 24, I promise. For budgeting purposes in FY19, if you ask me, how much money is available, Mr. Superintendent? Very logical question. If we take 256, 242, we subtract 80,197, you're going to get, and I'm doing it in my head, somewhere around $176,000. That's how much money is available. For the budget year we're sitting in, FY18, we didn't use any carryover because at this point last year, we thought we were $50,000 in the red. So the 176 is available. And it will be a board level decision how we use the 176. That 176 is in the general fund. There are no restrictions on its use. It's not special revenue fund, so it's not federal money, it's not designated for anything, but that is available for budgetary use. The last thing I'll say about your audit, occasionally I get questions about a couple other areas. Let's look on page 29. Here we see a list of special revenue funds and the balance as of July 1, 2016. And what I want to call your attention to, these are various grants and so on. What I want to call your attention to specifically is adult education. 6 or 7 rows down on the left. Balance July 1, 2016 at the start of this audit period, $129,249. Revenue expenditures moving left to right. Balance at June 30th, $133,954. That's a lot of money. How then did that program accumulate $133,954? Spoke with your auditor again this afternoon. I said, refresh my memory as to how that all occurred. During the course of 1 year, the adult education program charged $98,000 to participants. In speaking with your town manager today, she believes that once upon a time that would have been a state match that came back to us. I'm not an expert on what occurred that many years ago, but if you're wondering how that money originated, this is special revenue money. It is not money that was miscoding, because I immediately asked the auditor, were adult education expenses charged to the regular education budget, and her answer was no. So that is not a coding issue. What it is that your program 5, 6, 7 years ago benefited from a stronger revenue stream. In another year, $53,000 of revenue was realized to that program. So what has happened is revenue has come into that program, but it just hasn't been spent out. So what I want all of us to understand is this: that is considered special revenue. It is not general fund.
How does that come in? Explain that.
Excuse me?
Where does that come from?
In speaking with your town manager today, she believes that it was part of a state match, whereas the state, if we spent X number of dollars, the state would give us X number of dollars. But that it well precedes my time as your superintendent. Do you remember what year that was?
No. It was before my being on the board, I believe.
Right. And the other year that saw such an increase in revenue would have been 2013-14, where $53,000 of revenue came into that program. Some of you, do any of you recall voting on a large adult education issue in 2013-14?
Never went above 18,000, that I'm aware of.
So what's going to happen with this money? This board has already voted to pass the adult education program over to the town. I met with the town manager today, Mr. Jenkins was with me, to make sure the town understood that they're going to be receiving a check from the school department that appears on the warrant tonight for that amount of money. I informed the town manager that she could probably run the adult education program at its current level of expenditure 6, 7, 8 years maybe. So the point that I made to her, and I'll make this point to the board and to those of you here this evening, if the town wants to have an adult education program, they don't need to raise any more money, because you've got enough money there to run the program. So in the summertime, when it comes up for a vote, this town only needs to vote to allow the town to spend it. You don't need to raise it. And that matters in how the warrant language is written.
Mr. Johnson, but this year, they did allow to put $18,000 into it, and they haven't spent a dime of it, so hypothetically, the town needs to add $18,000 that they're holding for to that 133.
And you are correct, Barbara, because there's a 1-year lag between the audit. This is as of FY17, and we're sitting in FY18, so you're right.
But they have done nothing, they did not move forward with either Axiom or their own people, so that money was collected from the taxpayers, but has not been spent.
Right.
Thank you.
So, the last thing I'll say about that, because this now is under the administration of the town, is that you don't need to raise any more money to have that program. So that could potentially be a source of savings to the town. I know there are some people out there who are interested in that. The town doesn't need to raise that money in the summertime when the town votes in August. And they can still have their program because they've got the money. So that's the last thing I'll say about adult education. And if you're curious, on pages 30 and 31, once in a while, I get a question that says, actually 31 and 32, excuse me. Once in a while, I get a question about the building level activity accounts, how are they tracked? And here they are on those pages. Student activity accounts, you can see. Jean Fund on page 32. The teachers pay a couple bucks to wear jeans on Friday. All right. You can see how that's accounted for. Pee Wee basketball, Scholastic Book Fair, Greenhouse Fund, drama club. Once in a while, somebody asks me, well, who keeps track of those building level accounts? This stuff is in the checkbook, in the desk, in the office. Well, it is audited, and there it is. So, having said all that, I apologize for the over-complex nature of my analysis, but your position is vastly better than it was a year ago. And I believe that would be welcome news to the citizens of Lubec. So I'll be quiet. I apologize, but are there any questions?
In the classes, you have your oldest class is 2007. After so many years, I'll ask that with no offense to Mr. Johnson, didn't we go back and write letters to them asking if they wanted to donate it? I mean, these kids are out of school 7 years.
So I went through yearbooks trying to find out who was class presidents and all of that stuff. I think I heard from one class and that's it. So that money, since this has been brought to our attention, now if the 8th graders have any money left over, they, from raising for graduation and stuff, they will donate to a charity, to a cancer fund. So when 8th grade leaves, these accounts are wiped out. Before I came back, they used to take it with them, and I can't track it down, and it's not our money. That money belongs to those classes, is the way I look at it.
So,
I just wanted to make sure that that's what we were still doing, is asking them, would you like to donate it back to, and I like the idea of donating it to a charity, but also donating it back to a class if they...
They've done that. I think they've done to the ambulance, different things like that.
Okay.
a couple other items.
Exactly fine, when you get there.
I'll move along. I apologize again. I'd like to announce that I have received the retirement notification for Diane Tyler. Her retirement actually began on February 9th, and we will miss her greatly, but we wish her well. Moving right along,
Adjustments to the agenda, are you done yet? Okay.
Just one last item that I have. I'm sorry.
Give him a break, he's bringing money.
Tina did a great job. Tina did a great job with the FedEx grant. I'd like to just distribute to the board a copy of a resume that I've received from a potential facilitator. This person comes to me highly recommended, but if you would like to look at that, you're certainly welcome.
This is for the grant we were talking about earlier.
No,
No.
this is at previous board meetings. It has been requested that we have another facilitator join us, and I have got a bunch of names, and this one comes highly recommended, and I can continue on down the search if you want, but I just share that with you at this time, and any one of you or more can follow up with me at your convenience.
Can I ask facilitator for what? Did I miss something?
I don't
This is
understand.
for that 10,000-foot overview of what's going on here.
10,000 foot.
The last person we had in,
There was some level of,
Professional development within the
That's what we
school. Organizational development within the school. That,
One of the what, sleeping dogs lie?
my board directed me to be more
board
reasonable.
directive.
Finally, and I do mean finally, the ESSA grant application requires us to list a foster care liaison. I have received one applicant for that. Are you aware of any more? At this time, I'd like to nominate Elodie Libby to perform the function of foster care liaison. This would be paid for through Title 1A dollars.
Which means what? What is foster care liaison?
If we have a foster child or more here in school, this liaison would be interfacing with foster care agencies, potentially state agencies, to make sure that this child is attending regularly, their needs are being met, things of that nature. It would be a requirement of the position that the person receives appropriate trainings. So this person might have to go down to Augusta on a professional development day. However, I've made it abundantly clear, because of because this person is a current employee, that her regular duties as a special education teacher must come first, because that's her primary function at Lubec. So if there's somebody, if we have a foster child student here in Lubec, and this appointment right now is for Lubec only, because you don't have jurisdiction over any of the other towns, it is a requirement for the other towns, but here this evening, just Lubec. That person would have to do that after her contracted teaching hours. So you won't be paying for overlapping services is what I'm getting. That's all I have in my report for this evening.
Is that a long-term position, is that a yearly position, what is that position?
One year at a time. With the stipend, that's a good question. Functions quite a bit differently than a teacher's contract. So it functions much the same way as an extracurricular stipend, 1 year at a time.
and if we do not have anyone in foster care, there is no stipend? Or do we pay a person even if we don't have a foster care?
You would be paying the modest stipend anyway because of the training that this person would have to go through. If you're wondering what do I mean by a modest stipend, something in the vicinity of a few $100s. We're not talking.
A year?
Yes, for the year.
For the year.
Is this fee reimbursed by the state?
It's paid directly by the feds
Okay.
on Title I, so it's not coming out of a local budget.
Okay. We need to have that, and do we have an adjustment to the agenda at all? You are finished, right?
I am, finally. I do not have any adjustments to the agenda.
Okay, any old business? And under new business, we are graced with the presence of Sheldon Marzal tonight from Maintenance Update. What do you have to say?
Maintenance update? Still gonna have to have work done to that roof.
Can you elaborate a little, Sheldon? This board has seen
This,
some warrants come through with some
the system is
expenditures.
old. The steam traps aren't working good. and they're plugging up, and that's causing a lot of pressure underneath it. It's being released outside, which is costing money and fuel too. The steam traps, there's around 10 of them in the gym. Some are up high, some are behind stuff, but it's hard to figure out just which ones they are. Once they start fixing them, he wants to do the most of them until he gets the problem solved, and I don't know how long it's gonna take or anything else. But as far as the elementary end goes and the money that was spent, that was some switches and stuff, we just plain wore. They wore up, you know, and they all went to once, and
You talk about the boilers.
that's all, everything's fine on the elementary, and it's the,
Your best recollection, when were those boilers installed in the elementary end?
I wasn't here, I think 2000,
2007?
yeah, something, 8, something, I wasn't here
Yeah.
then. Those are the newest ones in the elementary end,
Okay.
and the other two were, one of them's really old. You
You're
got
talking about the other boilers under the
steam
gym.
the steam boiler under
Okay.
the gym is really old.
So the two boilers we have under the gym go back to 1975 or
Older,
maybe before then.
yeah,
One is steam
one is,
and one is hot water.
yeah,
And the one that's steam is
The one
the
that's-
oldest one,
yeah,
and the one that's like on its last leg.
yeah.
Okay, so,
That- that's
Did we
what-
fix the issue with the steam trap that was underneath the gym floor? Is that all
Yeah,
fixed,
that-
so it's
yeah,
not going
yeah.
up into
Going
the...
outside, but.
yeah, it was actually this time last year, we had a steam leak with the steam trap and it was venting out.
Mm-hmm.
And because over the years, that's probably been happening,
Right, but not as bad as that.
well, not as bad, well, probably goes back even before your time. There was a ceiling in there. The ceiling was plaster and lath, and because the steam vent was venting, the ceiling fell down, so there was no ceiling. So when this new steam trap episode happened, it was venting underneath the gymnasium floor, and it was putting just live steam up onto the floor, and that's why the floor buckled. So it was actually this time last year, wasn't it, or was it in April? It was this time
During
last year.
basketball season.
Yeah.
Right,
Remember that?
right as basketball season started, we had the floor repaired with emergency repair and the ceiling replaced inside the boiler room. And then about a month later, we had to have the steam vented through the stack. So
Which still isn't a fix, is it?
it's not a fix, it's
No, but it's
a Band-Aid.
Right.
So, but yeah, we're well aware of what those boilers need. They need replacement. So.
Well, it's still gonna have work done to it, and, you know, it's just one of those things.
So, the roof in that room between the cafeteria and the gym, what's going on with that? That's
That's
still leaking?
Janitor's closet where they
Janitor's
connect.
closet.
That's still gonna be done. That still leaks on.
Okay, and there's only one company that will come out and do that, right?
That's the water coming off of the gym roof, lays on that roof by the janitor's closet, and there's not it's just seeping down through. You can go up, shovel the snow off, but it's still getting down there somehow. I don't know where it's all coming from.
Any other stuff going on? Any other things that you want to bring to attention of the board?
It's just that Easton came the other day and fixed a few valves in the gym in there that, there's a couple steam valves that were leaking real bad off the roof and get rid of some of that problem.
Okay, have the ones in the gymnasium locker room areas been repaired?
Going down over the stairs, yes.
Those
And the
are
one by the
repaired.
girls' locker room, yeah, that's one of the big valves.
Because those were hazards, so, okay, those been repaired. I think that's probably that bill we had on that last warrant,
That's what that was.
so. Okay, thank you.
We still gotta get one of the ceiling fans fixed though, right?
Mhm.
We have one that doesn't work at all, and we have two that work, and one up on the stage that doesn't blow heat half the time. We're missing a motor to one of them down in the right-hand corner,
That's a hot water system there, right?
steam.
That's a steam system, okay. Hopefully that will be addressed very soon.
Easton was there working on it. I mean, they took the motor and stuff, but I don't know if they can't find one or what's the matter. It's a big fan motor that goes around that coil that blows, when the pressure gets up, it blows heat down with the fan turning, but there's no motor in it.
Yeah, they can't get a motor to go
I
in.
don't think so.
It's just outdated. The whole thing has to be replaced, so. Okay. Very good. Mr. Hayward,
Sure.
technology update, what do you have for us?
Well,
To let you know, we have 109 computer assets, iPads, laptops, and Apple TVs in the vicinity, At this point in time, I'm working on a new program for the school information system, Web to School. We are participating in 3 different programs: Free Apple School, which is teachers and students; the Google School, which is part of the website, which are going to be updated, and that's for teachers and iPads; and the Lubec MDM, which actually controls the iPads and the laptops. The 109 figure also includes the numbers of the 7th and 8th grade, which provide their Apple iPads are provided by the state. The rest of the assets pretty much belong to the school.
Okay, so the 109 pieces you're talking about, that consists of mainly Apple iPads and...
It consists of Apple iPads, laptops, and Apple TVs.
Okay. So when you go in every week, what do you do? What is your function there?
The very first thing I do is go down to the principal's office and await my marching orders.
Okay.
After I get there, I go down to the hall and go into the secretary's office and see if anybody has left me any nasty messages there. If I have nothing to do there, I irritate a few teachers and walk up and down the halls a couple of times to see if any teacher will come out and say, "Oh yeah, now I see you. Let's talk about this problem." Or, "Can you help me out with this?" And I usually can either spend 2 or 3 minutes getting things straightened out, or it can be 2 or 3 hours getting things straightened out. My job function down there is to be a helper, to help everybody in everything that's going on, all the staff, all the students, or whatever needs to be done, to repair or replace.
So what are the typical problems you're running into? What are you finding that people need stuff done with help with?
Just usual software, how to work with the software, things.
This is on an Apple unit or something?
On Apple iPads or Apple computers.
Okay.
We have some old PCs, Windows computers, which are down there in the corner. Anything that needs to be taken down to the recycling center, it's my responsibility to make sure that any hard drives are taken out of it, so that we don't have any security issues, and then dispose of them properly. Other than that, besides working on things in my office and taking care of the programming, the security of the systems, and other things for the school, that's basically what my job is.
Okay. So when you do these repairs, are you doing work orders? Are work orders filled out on these? Or repair orders?
Well, the previous people, I went to work down there in 2003, and the reason my job was created basically by a grant from Peggy Bailey was that so the people didn't have to do that, because that's the way that they were doing it. They had a contract with some people in another facility in town, and they were having issues with the people coming down and fixing the problems. So it was explained to me that it was probably a good idea if I made myself available and was able to help out the people as they needed it. No, I don't have a word. I'd probably be able to come up with an open source free program that would have tickets and have everybody enter into a ticket, but that's why I walk up and down the halls, because people have problems and I deal with them at that point in time.
So you don't do a work order. Let's say someone has a problem with their computer repeatedly. You know, it's the same issue and something like that. How do you know, maybe it's time to replace that computer? Maybe it's time to, remediate that problem and get that piece of equipment out of there, because now it's taking up time and breaking down.
I mean, very, very lucky on being able to, if they have an issue, I can fix the issue, tell them how to fix it again, if it happens again. If it does happen after that, I'll send it away, get it fixed, or replace it.
And are you available, so on days that you're not working and there's an issue, they can call you and you can,
Everybody down there has my cell phone. I can either walk them through the problem over the phone, or I can actually have the ability to leave my job, and which I've done on numerous occasions, go down and restart equipment if it can be fixed over the phone.
Okay. How old is the server or the network in the building?
The server on the network in the building is non-existent. It's been replaced.
Excuse me?
Which server are you speaking about? Because there are no servers left in the building.
Okay. How do we get information from the school outside to the web?
That would be the new school information system that we are using, and that is housed in the cloud.
Okay, but how do we get it out there physically? Are we on a T1 line, are we on a T5 line?
Okay.
Are we on cable, or are we on
yeah, we don't have T1s anymore, we have fiber optic, which is provided by the
T3 or T5?
Maine State Library, and I'm not sure which one.
Okay.
Maine School and Library Network provides the system which comes into the school as fiber optic. They changed it recently. We had our own line, but now our line goes through Eastport, which has made it less expensive for the state of Maine to provide us with the service. The library has the same access. The government has their own T1 line, fiber optic line, and they won't let anybody else play, for obvious reasons.
So, in any part of the building at any time, and we're running at peak efficiency, so we can get information and download it quickly and efficiently from...
We are running at 17.8 gigabytes per second with the connection that we have through Eastport. That's high, that is doled out through, well, they used to be Cisco, they used to be Apple airports, and now they are actual Cisco devices, which I was able to wrangle a deal with the people to come up and install them, because they're only supposed to be in 7th and 8th grade rooms. I was able to tell them, once the high school was closed and we had those airports up there, to replace those airports down in the elementary end. It also was connected, there's 2 sets of fiber optic line inside the school, from the office up where it originally, internet came in.
That's that big pipe that runs along the old high school section there?
That's part of it.
Into the old...
That's where it comes in. And that runs over to the computer office, which is right next door, and then there's fiber optic, which I had installed, and that goes down to the phone closet in the elementary room, and then branches off through Cat 5 cable from there, or Cat 5 cable to airports, which the vast majority is over the airports now, the iPads and the laptops.
How old are those?
The iPads, the 7th and 8th grade, are 2 years old. The contract that comes from the state of Maine is renewed every 4 years. And those iPads have maintenance agreements on them. Obviously, if you stayed one up, it's not covered under insurance, and our principal and I have worked on other ways to eliminate that problem.
Okay, so, the question I have, because I've heard from people down there, they're having problems getting online, efficiently online, in different parts of the school. And I think one of them was probably down in the, I think the 5th grade, where someone had to bring in a modem or something on their own to get out efficiently, to have something fast enough to download to.
Well, I guess probably that's, Wish they had said something to me.
My
I
classroom's
probably
right
could've-
next to that room.
Probably could have fixed that issue. There's nothing that was ever brought toward me.
My classroom's right next to that room. I have no problem in my classroom.
Okay.
I've only had trouble in the gym, but I just figured it was because of
Good
all
Lord.
of the metal underneath the gym sometimes interacts with the server.
Yeah, the only,
But if there's a lot of people in the gym, it also slows it down.
right, and there's only one airport in the gym, and it is in the gym teacher's office on the inside. Apple was unable, because of the extremely high systems, ceilings, to configure a system that would be effective from that height. So there was only one in there, and they usually don't, the kids that are having gym usually are not on
How many are in the entire building as far as what's been installed?
airports.
Yeah.
Eleven,
And those are all functioning right now?
absolutely. If you would have the person to talk to you, get all of me, perhaps there was something that we can reconfigure or do something about it.
Okay.
And are you comfortable working on our school website? Or rebuilding a school website for us?
I have never done it before. When I initially came here, my job description included the sentence about overseeing the web design and any website there. I have been working on it through Google. And Google School, of which we are a member of, has changed there to go to a new type of web page. And that is basically, the only information that I have at this point in time is going to be just a school calendar, but it's going to be in a format which looks something like that.
Okay. But you're completely comfortable doing it and
Yeah, because I get plenty of help. I get teachers down there who want to help, and they will give things. And
But you've never done this before.
never done before, never had to.
now, would it be okay if we were to get your email address so that if we had something to put on, we could email you?
Absolutely, if you could provide it to me in an electronic format.
Okay.
lhayward@lubecschool.com.
Do we have enough email slots in the system right now?
I have unlimited email.
Okay, with the system we have right now?
Yes, Google School. There's none of it that's on the server, that's all in the cloud also.
Excuse me?
That's all in the cloud also.
Okay.
There's no server down there that's operating. Which makes it kind of convenient because those are people that are tasked with security. They have PCs or whatever they use. The people they have to take care of that stuff. We don't have to.
Okay, physically in the building right now, is that server still there, that old one?
Yeah, the server's still there. We've got an old mail server down there, a old Administrator Plus used to be the machine that we used, that's all there. All that kind of stuff is still there, yeah.
None of that's functioning?
No.
Okay. What would be faster or more efficient, one of these cables that we're getting or sharing with Eastport, or let's say something from Time Warner Cable?
You're not gonna beat the price from what you get from Eastport. Something from Time Warner Cable, I doubt that very seriously, because cable TV, as far as internet connections goes, the more people you have on it, the slower the service is.
How, are we billed for this cable we get somewhere?
You're not billed down to the school, they come to the main office, but
Unless they go to your office.
if there is a bill,
For the service, we get it in the office.
Is that separately administered to the school districts, or is that something that the that your office absorbs?
I'll have to report back out. I can find out the answer to that. And I know Eastport has a relationship with the provider. And I want to say they have a relationship with Axiom, but I'm not 100% sure. But I can research that and report back to this board next time around as to how all that is accomplished.
Okay, so this 17.8 gigabytes, this comes in and out of that line that's attached to that.
Yeah, if you do a speed test down there through anywhere in the building, you always come up with 17. I do them first thing in the morning before anybody gets there, so yeah, maybe that's a little arbitrary, but
Yeah, because once you get people on it, it'll slow down a little bit. But everything comes in and out of that.
yeah, we have to meet certain minimum requirements in order for the principal to do the MEA testing, which she is so fond of, and I am too.
Yeah, she likes that.
Coming right up, I just started working on it this week.
And providing the state doesn't change that next year, and there's some other thing, which they seem to like to go out to bid for it every year, we'll be able to go from there.
Okay, anyone else have any questions?
I have a question with the ISPs. Do we have enough ISPs in there? I've had several people from, I've said, what would help with technology here? They said, "We desperately need more ISPs." So,
What, acronyms are not my strong suit, because I have a whole bunch of them from law enforcement. Internet service providers,
they said that there wasn't enough. They said that they are not able to connect. I've had,
But why would they, it's an ISP, like you said, is an internet service provider.
yep, they said there wasn't enough addresses.
So this staff or what?
The internet service provider
I
has.
was asking, I said, what do you need? What do you need technology-wise?
Is this staff reporting this? Because obviously if they're calling you, they're not following.
No, they're not
the chain.
calling me. I was curious. I said, you know, is there anything in technology?
ISP is an internet service provider.
Yes, I know she just told that.
The HCP, which doles out web addresses to each machine. 2 years ago, we had a problem where we had quite a few addresses were being used up because so many people had the password to the wireless. We changed the password to the wireless, come up with a few ideas about not giving them out to everybody that wanted them, because everybody came in with cell phones and all that other kind of stuff before we had towers, and they wanted to get on down there, and they were very upset when they weren't allowed to use it. So IP addresses, internet protocol addresses, the 192, 168, or 10.10 Cisco scheme is what we had an issue with a couple of years ago. You haven't had anything, anybody said, no, this is all news to me.
It's all news to me. If people have issues, they need to come to the right people to fix them.
Well, if you're wandering up and down the hallways, I don't
Well,
know
and
why
that's-
they aren't grabbing you and saying, hey, we need help.
Maybe the people that are calling you could ask them.
They aren't calling me, I was just there. I just asked some general questions of, you know, well, how do you feel about your IT? And one of the things that really came up to me was the apples are all serviced by an Apple technician that comes to the school every single month. They're the ones that fix it. They're saying that a lady is, Apple computers are fixed by Apple.
She comes to provide professional
Professional
training,
development.
professional development to teachers. She
And
doesn't
you
fix
fix the Apple
anything.
devices.
No,
No.
I send the Apple devices away to have them fixed.
Okay.
And generally, they only get sent away when somebody drops them and cracks the screen or that type of stuff. Aren't those the repairs that
Yes,
send them away for?
right.
He
I mean-
helps mostly with the applications on the computers and the iPads and shows the staff how to use them correctly. And if they have any issues with using them, he goes through them and shows them. But if there's an actual issue with them, he has to send them away. Through the contract, right? Through the,
Exactly.
Yeah,
great, that's
yeah,
what
we're not getting any repairs done by our IT guy for the Apple.
no,
It's
that's,
it's broken, send it in.
Yeah, he's coming in to show the staff members how to use it, and if they have a question, they're not able to get on the application for some reason or something like that, he's the one that they ask.
And I would like to see some work orders. I'd like to know fiscally, how responsible are we to the taxpayers to have somebody just wander up and down the hallways in case anything is ever needed? I want to know how many hours that we're getting service for.
But he's not just walking up and down the hallways. He said that when he first comes in, if there's no one in the office, no complaints, then he walks up and down to see if the teacher grabs him, and then he'll go to his office and start working there on what he needs to do. So it's not like he's just roaming the halls for 3 hours. He's actually doing work, he just walks up and down to see if
What
the
if
teacher
there is
grabs
no
him.
work for the week? This is a salary position.
Then there'll always be something with the web page, with the server, with the...
It's been 3 months, we do
something.
not have a web page. I'm a little frustrated with that right now. 3 months.
We went 5 or 6 years without one, it was no big deal.
But if
We weren't asked for one. We asked for a web page. We have an IT person. It takes an hour for a novice to
Yes,
throw
and you
something.
brought it to us, we discussed it, we talked about it, and we just heard back, we just talked to him and heard back to him last meeting, we just heard, okay, Larry said that he'd do it.
And it took a month for that response, 2 months for that response.
It took 2 months for the board to decide and get to him about it. You're blaming everything on our
Okay,
IT guy.
And that leads me to the next question. What else do you want?
I would like somebody that has experience. If we're gonna pay the money that we are paying out, double more than, that if we just called out a service, we are paying double for that. And we don't, they just wander around. If something needs to be fixed, you call it out and you pay for it. You don't have somebody just in case maybe somebody might need something while you're having a cup of coffee. I'm just not very pleased with the amount of service that we're getting, and I don't see anything to report back fiscally conservative to our taxpayers. I don't see the bang for a buck. And I think 3 months to get a website, just a headline, is way too long. Way too long. We could have called this out and had something done in a week. Somebody would have had a website up and running. I was not aware that our IT guy did not know how to do a website. Otherwise, I wouldn't have signed up.
If you wanted something created in HTML, it wouldn't be any trouble, but nobody uses HTML anymore.
Our town manager created something in an hour.
And this is the same type of system that I'm using now. So I can create something in an hour, but is it going to
I'm done
pass?
discussing this.
Mike?
okay. One comment.
May I make a suggestion to you? A web page can be simple, but it can be difficult. Like he's saying, HTML, people don't use it. It might help if he knew what you wanted on the web page. I created a web page for the Historical Society. But I had to think on the 5 pages that I created in our domain name, what exactly I wanted it to say on each one of them. So maybe if you give him an idea of what you're looking for on it, it makes it easier rather than he's creating something but doesn't know if that's what you want. I'm only making that as a suggestion. You know, it's like, bake me a cake, but you didn't tell me what flavor you wanted.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate the information. Okay, to consider the approval of the athletic handbook. This is the revised handbook.
Anything you'd like to share with us?
Just that there was a committee of Jenny, Wanda, Sean Tinker, the athletic director, Terry Murphy, myself, that sat down and spent 2.5 hours going through this. I don't feel, and Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel the overall meaning of the handbook changed.
We pretty much just shortened it. It was really
lot of redundancy in
Yes,
it.
and really repetitive.
Yep, and it seemed like if an issue came up, we created a rule for that issue.
Yeah.
And then maybe we haven't had that issue since. The only thing that I had a question about, and I hope you have it, is that, I don't have a copy with me, the transportation letter, remember, no, I have the handbook, but remember the letter that they wanted, yeah, this last page, that talks about, below you will find a permission slip for transporting students for non-school functions. This will allow parents to transport students for non-school functions, example, educational tournaments. The permission slip is valid for the entire 18-19 school year. They won't hold us liable. Is that something, is that okay? Is that just not legal? That's my only concern. This is brand new.
Yeah, I mean, having a permission slip on file with a parental signature, it goes a long way. It makes me sleep better at night, quite frankly. It says specifically, permission slip for transporting students for non-school functions. It gets a little iffier if it is a school function, but the fact that it says non-school functions makes me feel much more comfortable with it. I think it's a good addition to the handbook. Are there any questions?
That was the only thing I had concerns about.
I have no question about that.
Okay.
Wasn't there something?
Yeah, so
few
that's
years-
what, well, last year we were creating one for each sports season,
Right.
and so
Right.
this is for the entire year. Bing, bang, boom, it's done in September,
Right.
and it's on file.
Is this the first reading?
Yes,
Okay, has everyone been sent a copy of this?
yes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the first reading here. Consider the approval of the athletic handbook for the first reading.
And we also talked about, this comes into effect next year, not in the middle of the school year.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to consider the first reading and approval of the athletic handbook.
I have a second on that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay. To consider the adoption of the following policies. The school committee meetings. This is the second reading?
Yes, we distributed those for the first reading and tonight, potential adoption. And just to refresh our memory, the school committee meetings updates the revised time for this meeting. We used to meet on a different night, different location. This just says once a month on the third Thursday, which is what we have this evening.
I didn't have any issues with the school committee meetings.
Do we have a motion on that?
I move to approve the BE school committee meetings.
I second.
Second on that?
Second.
All in favor? The EDA school committee meeting guidelines. And this again is the second.
Yeah, I had no issues with that. All that, we just changed it to, it can't be on 10 o'clock, right? And it starts at 6 on the third Thursday?
Yep.
Why would we sit in an hour, a meeting for 4 hours?
In case you're curious, I asked that question.
I mean, it was like 9:30 or one night or 9.
Once upon a time, Eastport went until after midnight on a fairly regular basis.
Okay, we have a motion on that.
I move to accept the BEDA school committee meeting guidelines.
Okay, second on that?
I second.
All in favor? Okay. IHBGA homeschooling participation in school programs. Just a refresher on that again.
The pressure on that is that we actually removed language from that particular policy. The original wording specifically referenced that graduating students would have to have a diploma based on the main learning, or a course of study, I should say, based on the main learning results. Common Core is in place for English and math and soon to be in place for science. And today, parents who choose to homeschool can make a selection from a wide variety of canned curricula. They are required to have a third-party evaluator at the end of the course of study, but they do have more options out there. So that language was just deleted. Other than that, that's the only change.
Okay, have a motion on that.
I move to approve IHBGA School of Homeschooling participation in school programs.
Second on that?
A second.
All in favor? Okay. GBCC, employee use of cell phones.
This language was revised.
Couple of corrections here, and the corrections are highlighted. Yeah, we got them good here. I'm good. Good. Okay. So a couple of the corrections were made. One was that school administrators may confiscate and search school-owned devices if there's reasonable suspicion that an employee has violated this policy and the device contains evidence of a violation. So the previous wording was personal and school-owned devices, so it's just school-owned devices. The second change, again in the highlighted area, was to make both the same whether you're driving a school bus or a school-owned vehicle, making cell phones prohibited for being used except during an emergency situation or a call for assistance in the event of a mechanical breakdown or other emergency situation, and then only while the vehicle is stopped or parked. And really highlighting on employees operating a school bus or any other Lubec consolidated school-owned vehicle prohibited from using cell phone or any other electronic communication device, whether personally owned or issued by the school unit, again, except during an emergency while the vehicle is stopped. So that was the change since the first reading. We have a motion on that.
I move to accept GBCC employee use of cell phones with the corrections.
I second.
All in favor?
Can I just
Go ahead.
add my 2 cents worth? I
Yeah.
would rather employees leave their personal cell phones out in their cars, because this at lunchtime and stuff looks pretty on paper, but it doesn't happen. There's phones in the building for them to use. But that's just all I wanted to let you know how I felt.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. JICJ, student use of cell phones and other electronic devices. Yeah, we'll have a refresher on that.
This one is just updating to reflect the devices that are there, and it acknowledges that it allows students to have possession of it, and I did not get any request to revise that language. So this one just continues with the march of technology, smartphones, iPads, iPhones, whatever the case may be. So that one hasn't been changed since the first reading.
Okay. I have noticed in certain classrooms throughout the country that a student walks in with a cell phone, they have to put it in a box up the front of the room. I don't know.
They're supposed to turn it into their teachers.
What are we
Get 'em back at the end of the
considering
day.
handheld computers and PDAs? Does that include the laptops and the iPads coming from the, what exactly is considered in handheld computers and PDAs?
Exactly that.
Those things that you mentioned would be considered. You can look them around. I think what immediately comes to my mind are the old Blackberries. That's old technology now with the keyboard right on front. But
Don't you still have a BlackBerry?
I do, and it was provided by the school.
Because to me, a handheld computer in today's terms and what these kids think of in
This
today's
is a
terms
handheld computer.
is a Kindle, is an iPod. So I think you have to have a separate thing for a laptop, because I don't think kids today think of a laptop as a laptop or a personal computer. They don't think of it as a handheld device.
The school issued laptops are the property of the school anyway.
But if they bring in their own.
Well,
If they bring in their own, they can't connect to the network.
And I know this, but I think that in today's terms, I think you have to put a laptop in its own category, because today kids think of a handheld device as something you can hold in your hands and not an actual computer.
Would you like to change the wording on that?
I would. I'd like to add laptop as its own laptop.
is that the only change?
That's my only change.
If you want to accept it as amended, I'll make a note of that.
Okay,
So it was add laptop, you said, Jenny?
So if you want to make a motion on that and add the change in there, we can try and get that amended. A motion on it?
I move that we accept JICJ, student use of cell phones and other electronic devices, and adding the laptop to amend it.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay, to considerable refundable key deposit.
So I asked the superintendent to put this on here, to make it a refundable key deposit. What happens is, for example, a particular group wanted to have some activities for kids, gave them a key and a code, can't find the key and code. Gave them another key and code. They chase them down half the summer to get it back. They probably have somebody's house key, because it doesn't go to any door in the school. So I thought maybe people would be a little bit more responsible if they had to pay $50, got it back when they turned the key in. Just for accountability. I don't know how people feel, but.
Who would do this? Who would-
So they would come to the office, and when they fill out the request forms to use the building, there would be I'll make a little addition. Received key, gave $50 deposit, return key, key deposit refunded. I mean, we get so many keys out there floating around, and it was the same group that, like I said, I never got back any keys, and I spent probably the month of June chasing them down. And I probably have the key to their front door, for all I know.
There's probably quite a few keys out there.
How much does it cost to rekey that front door, Sheldon?
I have to have Frankie T come
I'm
down?
not sure what they charge us, but she's right, I get keys gathered up for people, and I never see them again, I ask them, and they say so-and-so has it.
Yeah, I
And I'm
gave
going out and
so-and-so.
have a key made up at the hardware store to give the next group. If they bring their key in and turn it back in, I could give it to the next party that's coming to use the cafeteria.
I'm guilty of that. It's taken
Oh,
me 2 weeks to return keys before.
But at least they get returned. These ones didn't even get returned.
Miss
Most of the
Worrell's
time I
right,
leave it
we
for
have a
Ellen.
key that she gave me, I don't know what it goes to. It does not go to the school to any door, or anything else, I don't know where it goes.
So you're thinking a $50 deposit?
Refundable. They get it back when they bring the key back. Why, you wanna up it to 100?
Up it down to 10.
I was thinking a little steep myself. but-
50?
I was thinking more like 25.
I don't care, as long as they're just
I
looking
mean,
for
25
something
is
for
still
some
incentive, I think,
accountability.
enough to return a key.
What she's trying to say is not the problem to go get another key made up. The problem is you don't get the key back to the door, and you really don't know where it is,
Right.
whose hands it's in.
And generally, there's a tag on the key with
That was
a
on-
general alarm code.
Right.
If it gets lost in downtown Front Street, and it doesn't say Lubec School on it or anything, but just something for some accountability. You know, this building's owned, we talk about being cautious of our taxpayers. It needs to be secure. People need to be responsible.
Do you think a $25 fee is enough?
I can live with that.
Okay, we make a motion on that.
If it doesn't work, can we up it?
$25 is still, you know, it's,
I'm thinking $25 because a lot of these people that use the keys don't start with any money. They're getting the keys so that they
Playground
can,
for one of them.
yeah, they're getting the keys so that they can make money. So, they might not
And they
have.
can activate that key without your knowledge?
They can, there's
Not
no
good.
chip or
Yeah,
anything in
because
it.
There
they're
you go
not
with
saying
security
do not
team.
duplicate. If we get a key, I don't know what a key costs. We go to Eric's and get the cheap ones. I don't know what it would be for a
I'm
key
just
that's
saying.
stamped, do not
Yeah.
duplicate.
Because otherwise they can get it.
Okay, you can make a motion on that for $25, I guess.
I will move to put a $25 refundable deposit on keys and codes.
A second.
All in favor? Okay. Consider entering into the executive session pursuant to the statute citation MRSA